All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next part of the program, which will be a great follow-up to the conversation this morning. I have been chosen to introduce Eleanor Cippel, who is Managing Director of Sales and Business Operations for the E.W. Scripps Company, but her real title is Sales Ninja. We had her, she was one of the coaches for Super Camp, and when Rusty said he wanted to bring Eleanor, I said, well, that's great because there's nobody on earth I would rather talk to and drink wine with than Eleanor Cippel, but how is she going to play with by block publishers, because she's a newspaper person. So are we going to have to kind of get past the stigma of the newspaper person who's worked her whole career with that? It took about, I'd say 28 seconds for Eleanor to win the hearts and minds of the super campers, because what she knows is what you need to know, which is how to make a sale and how to keep a sale. So it is a great pleasure to introduce to you the sales ninja, Eleanor Cippel.
Good morning. Good morning. So I'm very excited to be here with you all this morning, but I have to say, I was coming here this morning and I found myself a little nervous. And for those of you who do know me, you know that nervous really isn't my style, so I found it a bit unusual. So I want to give you some warning. Very often when I am nervous, and I mean to say the word success, I actually say the word sex. So if I tell you I've got a tip for great sex, we're talking about success in sales. Just put that out there. So, but I am delighted to be here today. I'm hoping that we can get through a lot. I'm sure that folks will give me some time checks. I'm incredibly passionate about sales. I think I could talk to you all day long about selling stuff. But I think it's also important to know I'm a student of sales. So everything that I know about sales, I have learned from other teachers and from just being out in the street and doing it and learning it and trying to pull it together. My best practice in sales is to try to take whatever nugget I learn from those who are out there talking with me about it, who are teaching me or providing information, to try to take those nuggets, whatever resonates, take them and use them and apply them to my business. It is really unusual that somebody will tell you everything. And honestly, in sales, there is no absolute right way to do things. Even for sellers, I've had conversations with folks in this room who have said, well, I've got a seller and I'm talking with her and I said, no, say it like this. But honestly, sellers have to find their own style. They have to find the way that they can communicate well to make sure that advertisers understand that they care about them and that they're able to get the business. What I hope to do today is just give you some pieces around how to structure sales activity. You will find when I talk about sales activity that I am rigid about sales activity. And here's why. If you are not rigid with expectations around the folks who work with you in sales, if you don't set your expectations, you have folks who are out there who are in many cases playing at sales. You can't diagnose if there is something that you need to do for the business or for the seller when there isn't ample activity to measure. So we'll go through what I advocate for and how I structure sales with the folks who work with me. And again, it's a bit rigid, so some of you might go, holy crap, she's such a bee. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about an effective sales process and then also some tactics to retain the business. And hopefully throughout the course of this presentation, also talk about some overall tactics for success. So with that, I'll just get started. I'm going to give you this piece of secret sauce. And here is the secret sauce for sales. We just heard from Tracy talking about the person that she hired for sales saying she follows this old-fashioned way. She's out there, she knocks on the door, she does these things. The secret to sales and revenue success is simply this. It is consistent and deliberate, urgent, focused, persistent sales activity. So there is an old saying in sales, the more calls you make, the more business you get, and so help me God, that is the truth. That is the absolute truth. In many cases, when we have folks who are out and they are doing sales, if they are not held to accountabilities and you're not looking at what this intensive sales activity looks like, you find things that sound like, well, customers tell me this, they won't buy this because of this, they won't do this because of this. In all truth, there isn't enough activity to see if that is actually the case. So what are the activities that make up an ideal sales day? So I'm just going to give you a little insight of what those look like for me and for my teams. There are things here related to new business development that are incredibly important. For new business development, that requires really heavy prospecting, in-person telephone prospecting, pre-call planning, trying to develop an opener and to get into the door. Needs analysis meetings, understanding what customers want, idea generation and strategizing, presentations to prospects. Once you get the business, you go into a phase that's around account management. You've got the business, how do you keep it in the door? And that also requires things like, calling on those clients who've given you business. And interestingly, this first one is often a miss, because we'll get folks in the door, they'll buy advertising from us, and then nobody talks with them for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or until they call to say, hey, I don't think this is working and I'm going to cancel. Well, duh. We've got to report and follow up with them. And in many cases, especially digital campaigns, it's so important to manage account management around campaign iteration and changes. It's important for advertisers to know that they're going to have to adjust their strategy, adjust their campaigns, adjust that program, and that your seller is going to help them and work through that with them. Creative redesign, swaps, promotional creative strategy, all of those things. And then, of course, once you have the business, wouldn't it be nice if after you've earned the right to show that you've generated results, you've earned the right to ask for more? Wouldn't it be great if your seller actually did that to help you grow more revenue? And any good prospect and any good advertiser that you have on board with you is the seed for a referral. And a referral is a warm lead, and it's far easier to work referrals than it is to work very hard cold calls. And every sales business in the universe uses referrals. But in media, we kind of stink at it. And then lastly is account management, and those are things like contact management and, of course, procuring testimonials and presentation development and business and industry trends and networking. Now, there are things that sit in here that can very easily enable your sellers to think that they are very busy doing sales, and what they are doing is nothing that actually pertains to selling anything. So we're going to talk through that a bit. And I have to say, in my experience and in my tenure leading sales teams, I have had numerous conversations with folks. I had one quite recently, in fact, where this guy who was out in one of our sales teams just shared with me, and he was so certain that he was really busy and that he wasn't meeting his goals, but he was doing all of the work. All of the work. And when we sat down and we sort of peeled back that onion and looked at what he was doing, we ended an hour-and-a-half conversation when he said, I'm really not doing what I need to be doing, because the tasks that he felt important or that he prioritized and where he was investing the majority of his time had nothing to do with actually getting in front of customers asking for money. So top sellers make every minute of every day count. And for all of you, while you're not, I wouldn't necessarily say you are sales managers or sales leaders, you're running your businesses, and you are sales managers and you are sales leaders. So setting expectations around the notion and setting the tone for that to be the case out of the gate is incredibly important. So here is what a schedule for sales activity looks like with my team. So this is when you might go, oh my God. So we structure days and we set expectations out of the gate that for folks who are developing business for us, they are out there, and that these are the expectations that they do. I ask them every day, and I don't accumulate these over the course of the week. Every day is a day goal. I want them knocking on 10 doors to go in and just see if they can't find out who the decision maker is and do it. So a cold call or a door knock. I expect 3 presentations, a needs analysis, or a sales call with somebody sitting down with the intent to ask for money to build business. And lastly, two client follow-up calls. And this is a daily goal. Now, do they do this every day? They don't. But if they don't do it today, there's tomorrow. The other thing that we structure is we structure time that is explicit to actually making, we call them power hours. They're explicit to actually making calls, to set appointments, to get in front of customers. And we do those with a great deal of diligence. we get folks, and I would encourage you to do this if you have sellers who are working for you and if you have more than one. To organize these teams, you can do it in a conference room, you can do it in a dining room, you can do it on a cell phone, you can take turns. But these phone hours produce a great number of appointments. They're incredibly important, and they have to be focused. We don't do emails, we don't eat cookies, we don't go to the ladies' room, we don't play with our cell phones, we don't do anything else through the period of time that we are making these calls. And trust me, they have done it. I actually was in one of our offices and found a rep climbing on the floor under desks because she didn't want to do the power hour and she didn't want anyone to see her, which was really kind of interesting. She was an adult. Or so we thought when we hired her, I guess. But they're very, very focused. And we find if we sort of force this and set this time, ask them to set this time aside, the amount of appointments continue. If you set the expectations for sellers around numbers and metrics that they need to meet for sales and for customer contacts, they don't drag you around, and last night we heard the folks from outside of Nashville talking about they don't suck the life out of you because the expectations are absolutely clear. And if the expectations are absolutely clear, then we're not saying things like, well, I can't do that, or I didn't do that, or I didn't do all those things, because the expectations are explicitly clear. And if they're not performing to that, we have to find out what's on their plates and why, right? But if those expectations aren't clear out of the gate, they will drag you around. And you have a business at stake. The other thing that we do is we do schedule time that we talk about for admin work. So those are things like, putting information into their CRM, doing some trend research, doing some other things. It's not a great deal of time, and I'll tell you how we get through that and give you a couple of tips as we continue on. We also do meet with them on a regular basis. So for sellers, I think it's incredibly important that they have a one-on-one meeting each week. Again, in my experience, they will go where you point them. You have to point them, and it has to be clear. And then most of the time, they will go and achieve, or they will find a way to try to determine and sell you on why they didn't achieve. Well, before I go on, anybody have any questions on this before I start rolling down the rest of the path? So very, very strong telemarketing time, really meant to call on either folks that we've made cold calls to and we've collected business cards or names of decision makers throughout the week, or just lists of possible leads that we're calling to try to set appointments.
How do you get the loyalty and commitment to do this every day? Do you have them on their salary?
Yes, so
do you have them on your commission? How do you to get that kind of commitment?
In my shop, they're on salaries. Some of them are very, very small base salaries, and then we have some folks who are on commission that are draws against commission, so we pay them a draw weekly, but it's a draw against commission. We set the expectations that this is what the job requires, and this is what we're going to look at, and if they want to earn money and have success, this is what it's going to take. So this is just a summary. We ask them to do 180 dials a week, so that's about 2 power hours of just hitting the phones. They leave voicemails. They don't always connect with folks, but we get them through. 10 cold call or door knocks a day. We use those. Those are very quick. They're not in there to sell grandma's cookies. They're not in there to make friends. They're not in there to talk about where the kids go to school. They're not in there to build a relationship. They're not in there to flirt or to do any of those things. They're in there to garner who the decision maker is, to determine how to get an appointment, and to actually practice some situational awareness. It's amazing if you have sellers who are actually in tune with what the intent that they are to have when they show up, what they will find. We made a cold call into an office, and we're trying to get some information from the gatekeeper at the desk, and I looked into a conference room, and their entire plan for the year was on a whiteboard sitting in front of me. Right there, I knew how much money they were allocating towards budgeting for marketing and advertising, what their expected revenue projections were. They were right inside the door. It's amazing what you will see and what your folks will see if they just practice a little situational awareness and know that this is a fact-finding mission. They do it very quickly and very efficiently and get out. 3 sales calls a day, and again, this is in pursuit of business. We're asking them to specifically try to get to a place where they have 3 appointments a day where they are talking to somebody with the intent to sell something, to garner business. that they do 2 follow-ups a day, so we don't experience those things like we sell somebody and then they don't see anybody for 30 or 60 or 90 days. And then we also ask them to get referrals, to ask for referrals for folks who are seeing success, and to ask for testimonials, because advertisers like to see others who have had good experiences, right? And other sellers use those and are able to build a sales story around that. Now, for you and for a business, if we work the numbers, and I did this based on somebody who's working full-time, so a full-time seller out there 5 days a week, this is actually what you end up with. So let's say they do 15 sales calls a week. They've got a 20% close, which for heaven's sake should be a minimum. And then we'll talk a little bit about working the numbers, because for you all as leaders, if you set the expectations and you have the numbers in place, and then folks aren't reaching their goals or they're not producing, there are things that you can go back and coach to, and you can try to identify what the issue is. So they certainly should have at least a 20% close rate. If we did 3 contracts a week from a 20% close rate out of 4 weeks, and we look at what an average minimum contract amount is, we can see what that turns into. So let me just show you what that could mean. So 15 sales calls with a 20% close rate at 3 deals a week would be 12 deals a month. You guys with me so far? See if you track with me with my math. If an average sale was $250 a month, annualized, that would be $3,000 per contract a year. Everybody with me? Okay. So if your seller is doing 12 deals a month at the average monthly spend rate, so the contracted amount of $3,000 a year, that would equal $36,000 in gross contract value a month. That's what they signed or they bring in that should come in the door. If you have a rep who does that consistently for 12 months, that equals $432,000 in gross contract value. So what does that mean to you? Because we're looking at the contract amount, and I haven't factored in any churn, but ideally we're going to talk about how to retain it, and churn would be very, very small. But it really means if this happened on a consistent yearly basis for you with 1 rep working full-time and an average sale of $250, when you went into your 2nd year after 12 months, you should be able to see $36,000 a month in billables as a result of that from 1 rep. At $250 a month in average sales, 12 deals a month. How's that sound? Sounds all right. That's double my inventory. Okay, so if it's double your inventory, what a high-class problem to have, right? Because now, if you've got more inventory than you have, if you've got less inventory and you've got more demand, let's add inventory, let's hike rate. So, you know, I mean, it's supply and demand, right? And so there are ways to manage through that. And it's a very good problem to have. And if you have a seller who's out there producing and you are garnering this revenue, listen, call me. We will find a way to help you develop that. So the other thing that I think is really important is for sellers to be able to see what they can make, and for you to also see what sellers can make. Because, you know, selling it's hard work. It can be a lot of fun. I think it's the best job in the world. I think there's an incredible amount of freedom that happens with sales, and frankly, I like to go out and talk with folks. And so I think sales is a great gig. But for folks who are in sales, they need to see what's in it for them. So a practice that we go through, and then a practice that I recommend, whenever we bring new folks on board, I reverse engineer their plans for them with their earning goal. So I get them to tell me what they want to earn in the year, and then we reverse back into that what it's going to take for them in activity. Their goal for earning is typically higher than what my activity says they have to do, and there's certainly greater capacity around the structured day that I put in place for them to enable them to earn more. But it's good for them to see that their goal is more. If that is outlined for them, so let me back up. So we reverse engineer their goal based on what their commission plan is, based on what they want to earn, and we back into the activity. So we back into the activity that's required based on those numbers, similar, working these numbers, right? So more calls, higher dollar amount in sale, higher close ratio. There are all sorts of things that could factor this, right? So if I want to earn more money as a rep and my closing ratio is 20%, and I know the goal that I want to earn, well, then I have to work on my skills, because if I could get my closing ratio up to 30% or 40%, that's more money for me. I can get more deals, or I can increase the average ask that I ask for. So how do I build a more robust campaign? How do I build a campaign that has a higher rate so that I can increase that average ask? Or how do I call on more people? Or what combination of those? And that's also how we coach back for sales, working the numbers backwards, right? To see, do they need to call on more folks? Do they need to increase their ask? How do we increase their closing ratio? How do we work the numbers to their benefit? So if we do all of those things and reverse engineer them, they then are asked to build a plan, their plan, for their 100 or 120 days to decide how they're going to get there, which usually is a bit more aggressive than my plan. So I look like the nice person at the end of that. But it's good for them to work towards where they want to go, right? And to establish that themselves. So I'm just going to summarize this, and I'm going to summarize it again because I just think it's so important. Set the expectation with sellers for full throttle sales activity out of the gate. Set the expectation with sellers for the activity that you want to see. If you don't have a CRM, get them to do call sheets. Make sure that somebody in the shop is looking at who they're calling on a weekly basis so that you can help manage that. And it's not unusual, and it's really not unusual to have sellers say, you know, listen, I couldn't get any business, they didn't want to do this, I talked to so-and-so and, you know, she said she didn't get any results from the site or whatever it is. And it's not unusual if you dig into that to find that they're giving you a summary, but they've talked to 3 people in a week. So collect the call sheets, set the expectations, make sure that the activity is happening, particularly if these folks are coming back into your shop and they're telling you what they're hearing on the street, and you're making adjustments to your business or your strategy based on what you're hearing from them, based on what advertisers will buy. Make sure that the data that you're getting is from a reasonable sample size, right? I mean, you wouldn't follow a market survey study that was a sample size of 5 people. But very, very often we'll make changes or make adjustments in what we're doing in our business because a sales rep says, this is what I'm hearing in the street, and they've called on 5 people. So make sure that you set the expectation, get the call sheets, manage to the business, and make sure that they're out there doing the work. Provide the structure and the measurement for success from the start. So again, if you tell them what is expected, then you can get to the business of diagnosing how to help them have greater success in sales versus trying to determine whether or not they're calling on folks or not. I recently visited a call center, a recruitment call center for the folks who do Monster. And they built a call center 2 years ago in a down economy in Florence, South Carolina. So just the point that they went out and built a call center in a down economy, I thought was pretty aggressive. But I went and sat down with some of their leadership team and some of their sellers. And, you know, for them, even those phone sellers, the expectation in the door is these are the number of calls that you're going to make a day. This is the amount of talk time that you're going to make a day. These are conditions of employment. You're going to use the CRM system. If you don't use the CRM system, you don't work here. Go sell carpet for somebody. But don't work here, right? So the expectations are very, very clear, which enables them to very easily get back to the point of if performance isn't there or the goals aren't being met, they know the activity's in place, they can try to diagnose or help sales reps build their skills to be able to establish that. And for you, whether it's you who are leading sales, if you have an operating officer who's leading sales, whoever is in charge of whoever these folks in sales are going to answer to in your business, you have to set the tone for what you expect them to do and then hold them to that. Make sure that that doesn't fall off or waver. And then manage the numbers. Manage the numbers for them, manage the numbers for yourself, manage the numbers. There's a lot that you've invested here. For folks who are producing content for you, for your content strategy, for your market strategy, you will hold dear and passionate to that. I mean, you have religion around that. If you want your business to actually generate dollars, have religion around the intent and market with your sellers or whoever is representing you for sales. And if you're doing it, manage yourself this way. Okay, so if we get them out doing the work, and you have sales reps who are out doing the work, they're calling on the accounts, you're seeing the activity in the marketplace, and you're not getting results, it typically points back to one of 3 things. And regardless of where they are, it's confidence, competence, or belief. So if you have a sales rep who is confident in what they are doing, and they are competent about the product that they are selling and how it will perform and how to manage it, and they believe that an advertiser will get results, they will sell all day. If there's a miss in any one of these, you're going to have diminished results. But if you have the activity set up and you're following that, you can very easily get back to and point to, is it one of these three things? And those are things that you can manage to. You can help them build their confidence. You can help ensure they've got competence around the products, right? And you can actually point to testimonials or look to advertiser success to instill belief. But everything points back to one of these three things, if those aren't in place. Okay, so we have folks doing the activity, and we have diagnosis measures that are out there based on managing to the numbers and ensuring that they're confident, they're competent, they believe in what they're doing, they believe in the results for an advertiser. So now we have our sellers, right? And how we sell is equally as important as what we sell. And there are many different styles of sellers. And there is certainly a sales style that I advocate for and I think will get you best results. So types of sellers are typically, they fall into a couple of categories. So there's the product or feature seller. So, and I would venture to say, and this is actually in my sales career, I think I probably began as one of these. And so this sales call or this introduction sounds something like, hi, I'm Eleanor Cippel. I'm here with SippelDailyNews.com. We have this incredibly rich audience. We get 100,000 page views a day. We have 40,000 unique advertisers, and you should be here because this is a really good thing for your business. Anybody heard a sales call that sounds like that? Anybody make a sales call that sounds like that? It's not horrible, right? I mean, but I'm leading with product. So in that instance, I've made that call all about me. I've made the introduction all about me, and I've made nothing about the advertiser that I'm talking to or the benefit that I bring. So not a bad thing, a style, but there are some nuances that we can do and manage to adjust to that. So another selling style is the price seller. Has anybody seen this one? I was not this person, but I know this person, and this actually works for many folks. But I've actually seen this person. I've actually been in restaurants or been in businesses where I saw this person come in. And in fact, a couple of, well, I guess it's more than a few months ago now, one of my folks came back into the office, one of my sales directors, and said, okay, so I was at this store at lunchtime, and she came in. So I said, who came in? He said, well, you know, she came in. Little miss, I've got all of my rate sheets in this big fat thing that I'm carrying around. So here is the story. Here's a seller. She's out. She's got her big folder of rate cards. She goes to the counter in this little restaurant. The kid behind the counter is like 14, right? He didn't make a decision on what shirt he was wearing that morning, let alone on what somebody's going to do with their ad dollars. And she says to him, you know, hey, I have this great thing, and it's $45, and you should buy it, and here's my rate card. And he said, that's really not me. You have to talk to so-and-so. And she said, but no, it's a really good deal, and, you know, here it is. It's $45. And I mean, and I could get it in. It could be done by Friday, and you could just $45. And so he said, well, that's not me, that's somebody else. So then he calls somebody to save him, because again, he's like a kid. He didn't make a decision on his shirt. So he gets like the next guy, so he's like 19. And he's made a decision on his shirt, but nothing else. So he comes out and he says, you know, you're really going to have to talk to Mr. Business Owner because we can't make this decision. But yet she takes her folder, and then now she starts passing things out to Mr. 19-year-old. But I have this, and here's this flyer, and here's my rates, and it's $45, and you can do this, and I can discount that. Seriously? For what? So anyway, so this is the price seller, and that's probably an extreme case, but very, very often we say things because we think price is valuable, and we anticipate that price will be an objection. So we'll say, you know, listen, I can get you in front of this great audience on SippelDailyNews.com, and I can do that for just $99 a month. So again, not necessarily a bad thing, but again, not doing anything to instill belief into the product or what you're selling, or to help an advertiser realize that you're actually there to help them versus push what you are bringing forward. So then there's the relationship seller, and this is a very successful sales style, and I would venture to say that many of you know folks who are relationship sellers who have very good success in that relationship style. And you know, folks like to do business with folks that they like, right? I mean, so you know, if you like your rep, if you like the person who comes in the door, you will do business with them. When I did field sales and early in my career, there were folks on bad days that I would just go and visit because they loved me. And they would buy whatever I had because they love me. And, you know, and many times in small retailers, there are days that go by that their cash register doesn't ring or the amount of money that goes into the register is really minimal. So if you're really nice to them and you talk with them and you build a relationship, very often you can get business, right? So relationship sellers can really solidify things, and they can really solidify sales. So much of that sale is based on the relationship, and there are caveats to that because that relationship can also extend to really how much consultation are you doing for a business, and your risk of them saying, you know, Eleanor, don't try to sell me those things anymore because now we're friends. And this has happened. This happened to me. I actually had a business owner, again, early on in my making friends career days, you know, who said, listen, don't try to sell me those things anymore. We're not doing that, you know, but at this point we were friends. And I actually went back to my boss and said, okay, I have to move because I need to go play with new people because I've kind of ruined these with my friendship. And I need to go out and get folks that I can sell to. Now, I understood that because that relationship was so strong, I was actually doing a disservice to her because she was no longer willing to take the advice or consultation that I was bringing. And while I might be friendly, I know my business, and I can help a business grow. As I said earlier when I started talking, most of what I have learned, I've either learned in field by myself doing it or from other folks who also have had similar experiences and great trainers. So we really advocate towards the consultative style, the trusted advisor, and this requires a bit more of a holistic approach, but also requires that we talk about what is important to the advertiser first, and that we lead in that nature. Now, I'll get into this a bit more, because I really do believe that it's really, really important. So are any of you in a competitive environment? Anybody show of hands? Any other media players in the market? Anybody here think you're the dominant medium player in your market? My friend Howard, yay Howard. So there's one, like 1 in 200 or something can say we're the dominant player in the marketplace. So what that means in a competitive market, and I think this is any market except Howard's USA, you know, it's a competitive environment. And for a business owner, there are like a barrage of people who come into their businesses every day, who come in to sell SippelDailyNews.com, and here's why you should do it. It's really good, and you should do it, and I can get it for you. And then you should buy SippelDailyNews.com because I got it. It's $45. So there are folks who come in all day long to sell things, and they're selling everything, certainly things that exist beyond this list: newspapers, magazines, yellow pages, direct mail, internet solutions, SEM, SEO, leads, clicks, whatever. Oh, and relationship management, the newest thing. Woo! And of course, there's the old email marketing and all the other things, and social opens up a whole door, doesn't it? This relationship management stuff, there's a whole lot of stuff there. And advertisers have no idea how to manage through that, so they kind of just glaze over and like wait for someone to help them. But the point of all of this is, for your seller, or for you if you're selling, to walk in the door, why on earth would a business owner choose you? What sets you apart? What makes you different? So I truly believe that if you think about this, I think this will resonate. When you walk into a business, or when your sales rep walks into the business, and if you think about this even for yourself, walking into the door into a business, where do you think that business owner's guard is with what you're trying to do? On a scale of 1 to 10, like that business owner's guard is like off the chart at probably an 11, right? I mean, they don't want you there. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want what you're selling. And your credibility is at like a -5. So immediately, if you walk in, the business owner's guard is high, your credibility is low, and you start to try to sell something by price or by product, I'm so great, it has no perceived value. Why would they listen to you? Your product has no perceived value if you lead in that style. Your price has no perceived value. It doesn't matter if it's $5. You haven't done anything to establish the value of that price. And in many cases, for those price things, if they buy that, it's just because it's cheap enough they can get you the hell out of there. But it still doesn't have any perceived value, and the likelihood that that customer will not continue to advertise is quite high. And even for the relationship seller, unless you're really good at relationship selling, and there are some great relationship sellers, but unless you are one of those specialty gifted, wonderful relationship sellers, even in that instance, When that business owner's guard is at a 10 and your credibility is at a 1, that relationship has no perceived value. Would you guys agree with that? You think that tracks right? Yeah? So in an effective sales process, we do things like planning, door opening, needs analysis, idea solution development, proposals, agreement and closes, and we follow up and iterate. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And the goal to make a sales call is to make a sale, right? But we want to make a sale that successfully matches advertising solutions with the business owner's needs. So to set ourselves apart, to make a difference, we've got to have reps who are able to do some of these things. They've got to be able to ask the right questions to understand business needs and objectives. Last night, Virginia talked about, listen, I know I can sell because I'm a journalist and I can ask great questions. I can get the story. The best chance to really ensure that we're creating a lifetime advertiser or we're creating value around a long-term advertiser is to do a very good job of digging into the needs of their business. This really is the key to great sales success, in my opinion. Reps need to do a little homework to understand the business and industry, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit because this is one of those places where they will get sucked into the black hole of I'm really doing stuff to generate money, but they're not. They need to be an expert on their advertising and the advertising that they offer. So we talked about confidence, competence, and belief. They really need to know the product that they are selling for you or the products that they are selling for you and the benefits to those products and what that means and the audience of the folks who are using those products, the makeup that you have and why you're adding value to the community and what your unique value proposition is. They need to be able to take what they hear and actually develop a good combination of ideas and solutions to help advertisers achieve their goals. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about you. Advertisers want a result. Advertisers want to achieve an objective or reach a goal, right? And they need to understand how advertising works when it works and help advise accordingly. So I'm going to anchor here for just a moment and share a story. So when I say understand how advertising works when it works, advertising for an advertiser is not just about what they advertise with you. Advertising works as a collective. So advertising should work together in synergy, whether they're buying from you or not. So I was applauding. I actually had my Zippo Lighter app out last night after Virginia spoke because she talked about not only doing her interview, but she also talked about I go back with solutions, and those solutions aren't necessarily me. But their solutions include me, but she talks with them holistically about their strategy and their objectives, right? So when folks advertise and they invest dollars in advertising, and by the way, just in salesperson speak, advertisers always invest with you and everybody else costs money, just FYI. But when advertisers invest dollars in advertising, where they're putting those dollars should work together and give them collective lift. So I'm going to share a story that I think really illustrates this. Some of you have heard this story before, so forgive my repetition, but I really think it's meaningful. So several years ago, when I was very young, I worked with a local carpet cleaner. So I made a call on a local carpet cleaner, an advertiser in the marketplace, and I found from this business that they covered 3 counties of business. They were in a very vertical market. They advertised in 3 yellow page books. Anybody ever priced yellow page advertising? Good gravy, right? I mean, that stuff is expensive still, even today, after like the Googles. It's still really expensive. But so they advertised in 3 yellow page books. They did full page, white knockdown, full color pages. So that translates to a whole bunch of money. The ad spend on that was $8 grand a month. Now, fortunately, the Yellow Pages had made a mistake, and so she got a little bit of a discount. Otherwise, I don't know how on earth she would have paid it anyway. So it's a mom and pop carpet cleaning shop. She had this Yellow Page deal. She advertised on the radio. Now, I found all these things out from her because I asked her questions about what her strategy was and what her results were. She was advertising on the radio. She was advertising run of station, which meant, carpet cleaning ads 7 days a week, in the middle of the night, wherever they had space. It was the best rate. She also did some coupon books that went out haphazardly, not a great deal of strategy. And she also did some newspaper advertising. So I took advantage of an option to just sit and talk with her. Now, in this shop, it was a small mom and pop shop. Pop drove the trucks. They had 3 trucks to clean carpets. She answered the phone, and she really did ask every person that called where they saw them from. So she was very diligent about trying to track her leads or her lead sources. So I worked with her on a strategy and made some recommendations. The majority of her business called in on, the majority of the calls or the majority of the business that she got happened for her on Monday and Tuesday. So Monday morning, right after the weekend, Tuesday morning, lag from the weekend, and then for the rest of the week, things really scaled down. So we worked together, and I gained her agreement in this strategy to test this. So we took all of her ads, all of her ad copy, and all of her strategy. We made it the same message. We took all of her print or visual advertising, and we got her to advertise got her to do some strategy on the web as well. I worked with her to make sure that all that creative matched and that the message was clear. And in that ad copy or in those visuals, we included pictures of their trucks or visuals of their trucks. They had an actual rendering of a truck that was very lovely, and she liked it. So, but you have to apply it to everything. So we applied a message with synergy. We put this visual and everything, and then I got her to manage her radio buys. And she pulled back from her run of station. Now, I didn't sell radio, so I want you to think about this. So, but we pulled back her radio buys, and we took the same investment that she was making in radio, and we pulled it back, and I had her buy Monday and Tuesday morning and afternoon drive time, because hello, that's when she got her call. So get your audience when it's coming. Who the heck is making a carpet cleaning decision at 4 a.m., right? So we moved all of the dollars. She didn't spend any more money. We moved the dollars there. We moved her campaign strategy in print, her campaign strategy in digital. Everything worked together, and we set the campaign in place. Went back several weeks later to talk with her about our results. So because she answered the phone and she tracked everything, here's what we found. She said that, and I'll make my very long story a bit shorter. She said that what she'd noticed an uptick in was the number of folks who had mentioned her trucks. Okay, I didn't repaint her trucks. We didn't do anything, but I want you to think about this, right? So she said, and had I not been paying attention, had I not been practicing awareness, and had I not really thought through this strategy with her, she said, we're getting lots of calls from the trucks. I'm seeing an increased amount of activity on the phone for folks who are saying that they saw the trucks. So I said, Linda, do you have more trucks on the road? She said, no. So all of the advertising that we pulled together got her greater lift and resonated on the call when folks saw the trucks. But they saw the same images for the trucks and every piece of visual advertising that we talked to, that we delivered, and her ad message on the radio referenced her red trucks. So this is how advertising works when it works. It should get you collective lift, and if you aren't talking about a holistic campaign approach, it's hard to point to what's working and what's not. And so when an advertiser is trying to talk with you and they're asking specifically for results, what are my clicks on your site? How did this work? I'm not getting clicks here. I'm not doing this. If you are not in a position where you're actually talking with them about their advertising strategy, you are at higher risk for churn, because what they do with you and what they advertise with you might help them get greater lift from something some other conversion. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. All right, so I'll get out of that rabbit hole. All right, so if we ask the right questions, and asking the right questions to advertisers, incredibly important. And this is one of those things that helps your reps differentiate themselves from others, or helps you differentiate yourself in the eyes of an advertiser. These are the things that help to bring that advertiser's guard down and start to raise your credibility. The more specific and significant the questions that you ask can be to their business and to the customers who do business with them, the better. Knowing who they sell to and what they sell is really, really important. But the biggest thing, and I have this in red, is the buying factors their potential customers care about. So if your questions, when you start to talk with an advertiser, when you do your advertiser interview, are specific and significant to their business, and if you're asking them questions that would be what a consumer would be concerned about when making that choice, the amount of relevance that it has to their business is higher, and their willingness to talk with you about it will be greater, and the amount of credibility that you exude becomes greater. And we also want to know from them, why would they be the best choice for why are they the best choice for their products and services? Just like we want to know what your unique selling proposition is when you go out and you talk about yourself. We need to know that from our advertisers when we talk with them. So I talked about pre-call planning. And I talked about some of the time sucks that can happen in pre-call planning, and I talked about knowing how to identify a business and be able to ask significant and relevant questions. So here's the secret. It's called the Google. Anybody heard of it? So I have reps, because I really believe that they can get sucked into time trying to do research and learn things. And really, for a business to sound somewhat credible, it's 3 minutes in your car. It's behind the windshield once you're parked. And a phrase that says something like, choosing an independent living facility, choosing a carpet cleaner, how to choose a carpet cleaner. The result that you get from this gives you very specific and significant insight into what's important to folks who are choosing this kind of business, and enable you to ask significant and relevant questions to an advertiser. This is very juicy, I think. This is very sexy. Now, reps may not think this is sexy. They might want to do the research, but I am telling you from experience and from sitting in the car, this does it. And pre-call planning goes from I have to spend an hour doing research because I'm going to go talk to this company to like 5 to 10 minutes. Or if it's a very big presentation, maybe 15. And this is in the car, so armed with a tablet, armed with a mobile device, this is easy to do. And it's very, 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 very easy to have some relevance to an advertiser that at least helps you separate yourself from others. Very often in like needs analysis calls, folks will say things like, well, what's your anniversary date? How long have you been in business? These are all really good questions, but those are later questions. The first questions really need to be about the business and the significance, the significant factors around why consumers choose that business. So when you ask specific and significant questions, and sometimes closed-ended questions, many times closed-ended questions, your prospect will respond 95% of the time. So I went to a dentist's office with a sales rep recently, and the dentist, which is unusual, the dentist was actually at the window, and the dentist said, I have your rates. I got the hand. Anybody ever have the hand? I have your rates. I said, hey, that's great. Well, listen, one of the reasons that we stopped in today is that we know that you do teeth whitening, and is that something that you have to be a customer, you have to be a patient for, or would you take new patients for that? Well, no, we'll take new patients. Well, okay, so the dentist, while he's kind of ticked off at me, he started talking, right? So that led us down a path that opened the door towards a needs analysis. Significant and specific questions can help you get rid of the hand, or I've got your rates, or whatever it is. But I asked him something that was relative, right? So because there's something there that's significant. He is doing teeth whitening. I don't have to be a patient. Don't people know that? Well, no, how would they know that? He hasn't told anybody. So let's look at key insights from a needs analysis and the things that you really want to uncover in that advertiser interview. And really, if you can get a sales rep or if you are selling, to do a very good quality needs analysis, if you can really take advantage of that advertiser interview when you are out talking with them, everything else becomes so easy, because you've really determined all the things that you need to know about what that business's goals and objectives are, but also what's important to them and what's important to the customers that they do business with. So the other thing that we ask for is in this needs analysis to really work towards identifying a gap or an area. So if I'm making a call to an apartment community, for example, and we're having a conversation in a needs analysis, I'm going to ask those folks how many open units they have and what their average rent rate is. Now, I might not say what's your average rent rate. I might say, I see from your website that your rents range from like $600 to $800. Is that accurate? Or $1,000 to $2,000. Is that accurate? They will probably say yes. I can correlate if they tell me they've got 200 open units and they're $1,000 a month. I know that there's a significant opportunity gap, right? The campaign that I'm going to devise for them is different than if they tell me they have no capacity and they have a waiting list. So understanding what they have in their needs, understanding the capacity that they have for more business is very important. Also, establishing specific business needs and objectives is incredibly important. Really, you have to understand what they're trying to accomplish. And there are some reasons for this. I mean, there are so many reasons for this, but really, it is not unusual also in sales to actually do a needs analysis, talk with a business advertiser, not clearly understand what the business needs and objectives are, and then actually work with them to get an ad campaign started that doesn't meet what they thought it would meet. And if you realize, and when you realize after the fact that you haven't properly understood their objectives or their expectations, it's really difficult to get that business back. So again, early on in my sales career, I worked with a putt-putt golf course. And I was very excited, and I think I both price sold, relationship sold, and product sold this one. So it was very early. So I actually got this putt-putt golf course to buy a coupon campaign, and I really sold that based on reach and price. And I didn't effectively set expectations with this one. So the coupon went out, and I want to say it went to like 43,000 people. And I went back to follow up with her to see what her results are, and she had something crazy like 69 coupons, which for anybody who's done anything with any sort of direct result piece that requires them to bring something back, you know that's phenomenal, right? So, but she was incredibly disappointed and thought she had terrible results. There was nothing I could do to help her understand how fabulous her results were, because I screwed up from the start. I didn't really set appropriate expectations with her. I didn't understand what she expected back. So even though from in the grand scheme of things, that was a phenomenal result. It was a great result early on because I hadn't done my job. There's no way I could keep her as an advertiser. She churned and we lost her. Okay, so this is where we get to making sure that when you're doing this needs analysis and you're understanding their objectives, that you know what the desired result is. If somebody's looking to get people in the door, but their ad campaign with you says, Happy Labor Day, that's not going to get a direct response. If they're looking to target specific consumers, if they're looking for foodies to come in the door, but they've created an ad or worked with you on an ad campaign that is sports specific, what are the odds of that matching? Right? If they're looking to create branding and awareness, half the time they don't know that this is what they're trying to do. And they'll design a beautiful ad that really has no call to action, doesn't get any direct response, or doesn't do anything to meet a target audience, but they will believe it will, and they don't know that it's a branding or an awareness ad. They don't know that that's a soft message, and it's really not going to get an immediate conversion. So your seller and you, when you're doing this is understanding what the business expects back. Because once you make the investment in a seller, you pay them commission, you get the business in the door, for God's sakes, you want to keep it, right? So trying to make sure that you take these steps early on in this needs analysis or this interview phase and set it up, you are setting it up for success early on. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about getting to yes. In this needs analysis, you're asking great, specific, significant questions. Advertisers will tell you things. That's the hope, right? That they're going to give you information back. So if you present back specific solutions that solve those advertiser needs and you use their words, they have such a higher propensity to actually buy because you've listened to them and you fed them back what they said their objectives were or what they felt. So, and when you're selling, and listen, let me say this, we all sell every day, so if anybody in this room thinks they cannot sell, I'm sorry, but you sell. You sell your husbands, you sell your kids, you sell your wives, you sell your parents. My parents would say I have been selling since birth. We all sell every day. So those skills are there. You just need to figure out how to use them. So, and you know this, right? So if you're trying to, if you are married and you're trying to do a remodel project in your house and you're telling your husband that this is what you want to do, you are taking steps and you are asking for agreement the whole conversation through. Because when you're done, you want to close that deal. Am I right? Anybody? Yeah, right? Yeah, I'm telling you, you want to get a vacation and you're trying to get that done. You start spinning your story and you're trying to get them nodding and you're asking for agreement through the story because you want to get it done. When you're making a sales proposal, you ask for agreement throughout. You watch body language and try to get them to nod so that when you're done with this, you're not asking somebody to make a decision, you're assuming a decision. So to ensure that retention, point back to the objectives that they talked through in the needs analysis, the things that they told you that they wanted to accomplish. If you've got those right, half of your retention work is already done. And again, use their words in their creative approach. If they tell you we're like family, put it in the ad campaign. We're like family. That they said that to you, that's important, right? So here are some tips to close. First of all, we talked about whether or not anybody besides Howard thought they weren't in a competitive environment or that they were the dominant media player, right? So if you're not the dominant media player in the marketplace, don't sell like you are. That competitive, we're better than these other guys story, that's a tough sell. And I want you to think about that. When you approach a sale and you are trying to position yourself better than others, and your advertiser has made an advertising decision in others, you are telling them that they made a bad decision. It's the equivalent of telling them their baby is ugly. Don't do that. They've made a decision. If you want to build some credibility with them, you have to at least help them understand that their decision was a good one for the reasons that they made it. The easiest sales position to be in, particularly for folks who are not strong sellers or who are not aggressive closers, is a situation that really is about stealing share. And you all have a great story to tell. You all do. If I asked you your unique selling proposition in your marketplace, you would tell me how local in nature you are, how connected to your community you are, how often your audience visits your site, the frequency, the time spent on your site. You all have great metrics because you are very sticky locally. It is very easy to use that and for a seller to say, look, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't buy daily news. They're a good product. That's a good place to be. What I am saying is by having all of your dollars there, you're missing a significant audience. So I'm not telling you not to invest there. I'm telling you pull back a bit, drop your frequency, reduce your ad size or whatever, and take a piece of those dollars and give them to me, because this is the audience that we have, and this audience is actually a match to your objectives. This is a great audience for you to meet. And to an advertiser, you know what they do when you tell them that? They go, okay, because that is a very non-invasive way to help them spread out their ad dollars, reach an audience that's not a duplicative audience or an audience that they think is important, and you're not telling them they made a bad decision. The steal share sell is an incredibly, I don't want to say incredibly easy sale because sales is not incredibly easy, but for heaven's sakes, it's a far easier approach than we're better than the other guy. Also, when you're out on a sales call or your rep's on a sales call, anybody had this experience? You went out, you had like a conversation with an advertiser, it was lovely, you're excited. You leave the appointment, it's great, right? We had a great conversation, I think it's really great. And somebody may have said, so what's gonna happen? Well, they're gonna call me next week. Okay, look, this isn't a date, right? We're not dating here and waiting for somebody to call. This is a sales call. They are never going to be more enthusiastic. They are never going to be more willing to flirt with you. They are never going to be more willing to do what you're talking about doing than at the moment that you have them excited. You have to ask for the money. You have to ask for the order. If they are there, if it's a great meeting, if things are going forward, close the business. Now, closing doesn't have to be, and I need you to sign this contract now. So again, there are tactics to close that business that are a bit softer, but you know if the meeting is great, in many cases they're waiting for you to ask. They're waiting for you to do something, not call back next week. They're already on to the next person by then. So assume the close. When you're presenting to somebody, and you have a seller who's presenting to somebody, if they have done the work around a needs analysis, they've asked these significant questions, they're relevant to an advertiser's needs, you're understanding their objectives, and this isn't brain surgery, right? But if these things are coming together, the call is going well, just assume the close. This is very easy to say, and we can have this started for you by Monday. They will likely nod. Those are easy things to say. Now, for folks who have some difficulty even getting there, this is one of my very easy cookies, and I happily share this. I started my sales career in television. I sold for a local cable station. We had no audience. We had no, I don't know what we had. We didn't even have great programming. I at one point just sold air because that's what we had, and I could sell that, right? And so I just sold shows and sold whatever. So, but I learned really early on in that if I could get somebody talking about what was going to be in the spot, what was going to be in the commercial, they were done. And the same thing works for any medium. If you have an advertiser who starts to engage, I recommend getting out a piece of paper, make sure you're hitting the visual senses for those folks, get out a piece of paper and start talking about what the creative might look like. If they are in it with you, if they are looking at the paper, if they engage, you're done. You don't have to ask them for the business, you just tell them when it's going to start and get them to authorize it. It's done. Okay, so now how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Because, you know, I can talk about this stuff all day. Okay, nobody's giving me any flags. I think I'm all right.
Does this thing work? The few times I've done this where I've actually sat down with the person, it's got really like crazy time consuming sometimes. Do you have any advice for when I know you have more to do, but before you wrap up, it'd be cool if you could talk about when the client starts to get like a little out of control where they kind of constantly want you to work on their stuff.
So are you, when they are, give me a couple more sentences,
Okay,
sorry.
Crazy Workout Bob in Downey, California. He sees the downeybeat.com, he wants to advertise, right? So he sits down, he gets all, just like he uses the paper, he's excited, he wants to pay the $100. That's cool, it's my first ad, it's just, the site is just a couple months old. Then he calls, he's like, all right, let's meet tomorrow. It's like, just give me a check, let's do this on Monday. You know, I read a little something that I should do that, it worked. But then like the next week, he's like, no, I've been thinking about it. I haven't got any clicks and I want to do this. It's like, well, Bob, you know, I have to do a whole nother ad. You know, it takes me a couple hours. So, you know, if you want to pay me to design ads, that's fine. It's like $20, you know. Oh, I don't know. And then he would just constantly trying to drive me crazy. He wanted me almost to be like a full-on like retail advertising specialist. And I don't even know anything about it.
So that's a great question. There are a couple of things there. So it's not unusual in a business, and if you think about this from a concept perspective, right? So most business owners have personality types that are very strong. They're usually direct. They very often say, well, just tell me how much it is. All right, well, this is what I want to do. And sometimes they're quite impatient, right? Most sales folks are also pretty direct and somewhat impatient, and so there are some mixes there that often don't mix. In these scenarios, and these are difficult, right? And this is probably difficult because of the way that you started this. With this guy, I would circle back because you have to get to those significant and specific questions to understand what's important to him and what his objectives are. And if you can get to what those are and you deliver something back, that time spent makes all the difference in the world. Because right now it sounds like, you know, he's sort of leading this, not really sure what he wants, you're not really sure what he wants, and so he's kind of chasing, he's pulling you around the yard, right? So my advice would be to get back with him, get him to sit down and focus for 15 minutes so you can help him, ask him some questions that can help you, and then move forward and ask him for agreement through that and get it done. So, and sometimes when you have folks who have personalities like that, you have to redirect them back. And we spend some time being quite polite. So, you know, I use phrases like, hey, I think that's a really great point, but let's talk about this so we can get this accomplished for you. And do what you can to pull them back in and reel them back in. And sometimes in just natural state, that's not what our mothers told us to do. They told us to not interrupt people, and they told us to be kind and to listen and to do all of those things. But in the sales process, to redirect them and bring them back, and feedback loop them. So Bob, what I hear is, this is your objective, this is what you're trying to accomplish, this is who you're trying to reach and target. Okay, we've got this. We're gonna get this started. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jody Rave. I'm the publisher of Buffalo's Fire. And you did a fabulous job in your presentation giving us the finer points of doing some advertising sales, but is the end goal to sell a single print ad, or are you offering other advertising platforms?
And with me, with my team? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we sell we sell a lot of things. So in my business, my reps sell print, they sell digital, they sell a portfolio of products. The goal around them with whatever they sell is to make the right sell, and we always point them back to what is the thing that is going to get the best solutions for the advertiser. So match the advertiser needs with the solution, and then provide the best solution and the best advisement from there, regardless of the portfolio of product soup that exists.
Of the $435,000 your hypothetical salesperson brings in on the top line, what percentage of that goes back in compensation?
So that would depend, and that scenario and that number, that would really depend on whether or not they were 100% commission sales rep. It also depends on market and depends on whether or not they're working on a salary plus a commission or a salary and draw. You know, I think each of your markets is a bit different. I don't think it's unusual for commission sales reps to be at a 25% rate if they're hitting goal on commission. I think that's probably pretty standard. I have even seen reps who are earning higher commissions than that if they're actually excelling at goal. So if they're over exceeding expectations. And again, it depends on what market you're in. I mean, if you are in West Texas, for example, the likelihood that you have to pay out that high is probably not there. If you're in a high cost of living state or a high cost of living market, the amount of commission that you're going to have to pay out or what you're going to have to pay to get a good seller is probably higher. Let's go there. I think you had your hand up, and then we'll go over here.
Hi, Kevin Coughlin from Morristown Green in New Jersey. Can you talk a little bit about the call to action and maybe give some examples of effective ones?
Sure, sure. And actually, if you would like, we can actually talk a little bit offline about this too, because this is one of those things that can just go on and on. So call to actions really depend on what is actually specific to your advertiser and what they're trying to accomplish. Call to actions can be as simple as trying to gain data from consumers. So if they're trying to build a database, they're trying to build an email list, they're trying to get signups, they're trying to build fans, they're trying to build friends. So there are all sorts of things there that can be actually specific calls to action to get folks to act. There are also specific calls to action that are related to, you know, just buying and acting. You have a special, it's time-stamped, it's time-based, or it's a discount that is you know, limited in time offer and large enough or actionable enough to make a consumer act. So here's what I mean by that. 5% off a pair of shoes probably isn't going to get a girl running. But 50% off will probably get me in the store, right? So, you know, those direct response ads and those things that have offers and call to actions have to be a call to action that is strong enough to get somebody to act. So again, it's not unusual with advertisers to think that they want a direct response ad, but they are afraid to use a lost leader to get folks in, to get them to act, or they are uncomfortable to make the offer really, really significant. I think one of the things that we've seen around call to actions and discounts and offers are really the success that we've seen for those folks who have done daily deals, right? So in those instances, folks were actually able to get things that were 50% off. 50% off brings action. So. Hi.
Okay, I have to hold it. Hi, my name is Manolia Charlton. I'm the executive editor of the Haitian Times. Before I moved to New York City, I worked in Boston as I ran a small ethnic paper called the Boston Haitian Reporter, and we realized we had to diversify revenue streams. And one of the ways to do that was sponsorships through a major event. Now, the first year, we broke even. And raised about $40,000. And in my community back then, that was a lot of money, but we just broke even, right? So what are your, some of the advice that you might have around outlets who are trying to diversify their revenue streams by sponsoring events or creating an event or training workshops like Suzanne had done at Oakland Local? What are some of your thoughts around how do you build selling, you know, advertising within a sponsorship?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of being out in market, hearing what folks are asking for, and then adjusting and iterating to try to accomplish that. I think that there are some really good paths that you will find. And I'll just divert for a second and go back to, particularly if you have sellers who are doing this significant activity and they are coming back with a credible measurement size of what advertisers are saying, they will tell you what they need in terms of new products. And my advice there is to listen to them. They will listen to how they act and respond. And there are, I think Joe is going to talk a bit later about how to choose partners and how to choose things, and so he might cover a bit of that in there. But I think there are ways, when you have a sales channel that's out there, there are ways for you to actually get them to do more. The other thing that I would say as it relates to events or those things, I mean, I think those are great options. Events can be quite profitable. I encourage sponsorships of those events and making them relevant. I have even seen very good successful events from online players who have actually created print products that actually spin off of those as well. In my group, in my company, we do events and they have been quite successful. The sponsorship dollars out of the gate from sponsors and the large asks have to be high, and then if you're doing some sort of event that has booth sales or whatever, absolutely. I think the thing that you have to be cautious of is sales time and resources. So in any additional adventure that you do, you really have to look at the impact to your core business and what that does to your sales resources. And I'm sorry, I know that I'm running.
We've got time for a few more questions.
Okay.
You're good.
So if you're, I'll just finish the sentence. So if you are planning to do an event and you have sellers who are taken off the street, so that means their pipeline work goes down. And when you think about a sales pipeline for a new seller, they start doing sales activity. It really takes about 90 days to see action pop from that. If you divert them from that activity and the activity goes, your results will diminish. And what you will see is a result 90 days out from that. So you might not see a revenue impact today from diverting their focus, but you will see a revenue impact in 90 days because the pipeline will go down and they will have to spend the time to build it back up and then start getting those closes again. So I think it's great to diversify, but I think you have to very, very, very intelligently look at your resources and your capacity and look at the risk and mitigate the risk to your core business. And by, I don't mean core business like, oh my goodness, it's your core business, it's your revenue stream. So mitigate risk about where your revenue might ebb or flow. I'm sorry, Howard, let's go with Howard and then.
So Eleanor, I was just going to point out, this is the third year for Block by Block, very different atmosphere. I think Michelle would agree from 3 years ago. You and I go back a long way. I would venture to guess most of the publishers in this room came from the newsroom side, not the business side. 10 years ago, probably you and I were in Knoxville for some scripts gathering. If I told you the day would come, you'd make a sales presentation to a bunch of journalists, what would you have said?
I would say I do that now. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I do think, however, that there is strength in the knowledge that you all bring forward that can help you grow your revenues if you look at those as transferable skills. And I think you're actually at an advantage because you are able to really dig into what's important. You are able to get a story. You are able to translate and transfer that to a sales rep or to a seller. And in the position to have to actually go out and talk to an advertiser yourself, you know what to do. You're skilled in that interview. You are far more skilled in that interview phase than most sellers are. That's a learned trait for sellers. It's something that you are conditioned to do as journalists. So I would have said 10 years ago, I don't know that I'm going to convince journalists that they're good sellers, but that's where I am
think
today.
You would have told the bartender to cut me off.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned before about are you the most competitive, what's the biggest in your market? And of course we are. We're very near the bottom, most of us. What if we aren't the first ones there to make a sale? I mean, we're in an extremely competitive environment. It's not unusual to go and find a pile of media kits when you get there. What if your competitors are selling against you? I heard you, and I've heard this several times now. We shouldn't be selling against our competition. It's very hard in an environment where somebody has gone in and said, online is not the place to be, and where we know that a lot of the mom and pops like to look at that thing that's been printed. Likewise, we have SEO consultants where we are who go in and say, banner ads are dead, don't do banner ads. So we're going into an environment where it's already somewhat poisoned. Got any advice for us?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing that I would say, referrals and testimonials, work those to death because you all have advertisers who are having success, right? I mean, you have advertisers who are having success on your side. Work your referrals because those are warm leads. Work the testimonials because they prove value. Really, really, really have clarity around your unique selling proposition for you and your sellers and what you're taking to market to be able to tell that story and take the high road. So when you are out there and you're in a competitive environment and somebody else has been out there and said this, this, and this, my response as a seller is something that sounds like this. Listen, I can't speak to whether or not their media works better or not. Here's what I can speak to. This is their audience. This is our audience. I think they're a viable choice. I think you're missing the boat if your eggs are all in that basket. And I think as a business owner, it's important for you to make sure that you're reaching the audience that can buy your good or service or product. And in that strategy and in that scenario, I have found in my experience that advertisers respect that approach a great deal more than they do the folks who say, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard because you want to go, you know, they suck. They really, I would never put $1 in there. I mean, that's what you want to do. And why would you, and besides, and you know, have you met him? He's a boob. Why would you listen to him, right? I mean, that's what you want to say, but that's professionally not what's going to gain you credibility. So if you anchor back to, you know, the business needs and objectives, your value proposition in the marketplace, and then the holistic approach to how advertising works when it works. And the better that your reps can speak to the holistic approach about how advertising works when it works, the better off you will be. And those folks who go in and say this or that, who sell against you, will start to, they will not win as much business as somebody who handles the approach the other way. I'm sorry, one more?
One more.
I'll be quick. Lon Seidman from the Independent Media Network in Connecticut, and we're in a unique position because we're helping support journalists in their local markets to sell ads, and this has been very helpful, and a lot of them are watching today too, so it's been good. Where we are as a network, though, is we're positioning ourselves to mid to upper level agency buyers who are a very different animal than a mom and pop would be. They're very sophisticated. They're also very conservative, and through your experience, you know, as a new brand, which is what we are, we have enough traffic to really match a lot of the major established media in the area. How do we sell ourselves? Because we have to almost market and brand ourselves at the same time we're making the pitch. What advice do you have for agency pitches?
Yeah, so you have a very, I don't want to say you have a unique sales position, but the sales position taking for you is a bit different than really actually talking to local advertisers, right? So your story has to be a great deal different. For you, you're going to have to understand very well how to deliver this collective audience and why it's impactful and meaningful. The more audience data that you can garner and collect and sell in your story, the better off you will be, because you've got to tell a story and you're in a conundrum. You're not talking to somebody who's super local, right? And you're not talking to, and you don't have the breadth or volume that a network brings forward. You've got to find a happy space in the middle that helps you promote that the audience that you're delivering and the targets that you can achieve are really meaningful and viable. We can chat a bit more if you like, but there's some meat there that you have to put around that bone that kind of really sits in between those two places.